I'm going to pick up where Pastor Brian left off last week in our Summer on the Mount series, and we'll be in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. You can turn there. I'll be there in just a second. Pastor Brian did a great job explaining how Jesus fulfilled the law, and I'm going to say more about that. And by the way, it's really good, and I know you are blessed, but I am blessed by our pastors. Pastor Brian did a great job preaching last week. He encouraged me before he went out of town with his family. And this week, well, a few weeks ago, Pastor Kevin actually encouraged me. And I just want to share with you a story. It has nothing to do with our message, but I want to remind you why it's so good to have Christian brothers and Christian sisters around you. Over the course of the summer, my wife and I have really struggled, and we're not great decision makers. We struggle and toil. It takes us like 3 years to buy a car because we do all the research, test drive all the vehicles. We're those people. And we had a decision to make regarding our son and where he would go to school. And I really was something that took weeks and months and praying. And I was in the office one day and I was talking to Pastor Kevin, and he knew that this was really bothering me. And it had really become something of a sticking point in my life I couldn't move past. Like, what should we do? And typically when people come to me for advice, I share with them that they should pray, that the Lord would close the wrong doors and open the right doors. And I began to explain to Pastor Kevin that, well, when I was growing up, this is what I had available to me, and this is what I got to do. And Pastor Kevin corrected me, and I needed to hear it. He said, "Mark, you are so concerned about giving your son something you had when he has so many things you didn't have. He's got a father in the home, 2 sets of grandparents around the corner that are loving on him all the time." He said, "Your son will be fine." You know, sometimes you just need a Christian brother, Christian sister to pull your head out of the sand and help you see a little bit of perspective of what the Lord has blessed you with, maybe what the Lord is doing, maybe what the Lord is confronting you about. So I say that to say this: I am blessed so often by our pastors, and I hope you are too. I hope you're blessed by the small group leader, that you're a part of their small group. I hope you're blessed by the Christian brothers and sisters around you. Had a long conversation with a gentleman who just was floating through. I don't know if you guys are aware, but our building has become kind of a stopping point. We have 1 to 2 guests every day on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays when the office doors are open. People just stop through. And they're rarely church people. They're often people walking down Port Centre Pkwy. Sometimes they're shipyard employees. Sometimes they are people who just got out of the system across the street or across the street. And I was talking with a gentleman about where his life was. And he kept saying, "I just need people. I just need people. Maybe I should go to church." And I said, I think that might be a good idea. It doesn't even have to be this church, but you need Christians around you to encourage you. So I say that because we're about to enter into a difficult text. And to be quite honest with you, the text we're going to read this morning, it's really hard to live out. And you're going to really struggle to do what Jesus is asking you to do on your own. And so before we even jump into the text, I've got 3 kind of pre-points, pre-ideas, 3 things to understand as we get into this difficult text. First of all, you need to understand this: the law fulfilled changes how I see people. Jesus said, "I have come to fulfill the law. I've not come to get rid of any of the law." And his crowd, the people listening, were kind of perplexed, because he then says, "Unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees, you will in no way see the kingdom of heaven," the kingdom of God. And they're kind of frustrated, like, what does that even mean? How can you fulfill the law? And yes, Jesus would be the fulfillment of the law, but he's also about to explain to them what the law was always meant to show them. And in each of the teachings that we're about to read, Jesus points beyond the rule, beyond the law, and to the underlying heart of how we see people. If you are going to be a follower of Jesus, you've got to understand this. You are not going to look at people like the world looks at people, okay? When the world looks at people, it looks at them in a couple of different ways. Are they successful or not? How can I get something out of them, or is there nothing I can take advantage of them? Are they pretty? Are they not? Are they wise? Are they not? And they put you into buckets. But Jesus is about to lay out, you need to look at every human. The humans you know, the humans you don't know, the humans who share your ethnicity, the humans who do not, the humans who talk like you, the humans who do not, the humans who think like you, the humans who do not. And he wants you to see them through a different lens than just your feelings, what culture says, or even how you were raised. And when the law is fulfilled, it will begin to change how we see people. Secondly, you need to understand, loopholes will wreck your soul. By now, there were 6,000 laws added to the 600 plus of the Old Testament. The Pharisees kept saying, what we'll do is we'll move the fence. There was a fence around the fence. So if what's inside the fence is dangerous, we'll put another fence outside the fence and we'll really protect ourselves. And they started focusing on rules. And when you focus on rules, you by nature will focus on loopholes. Okay, so I can't do that, but can I do this? And so maybe I'm not allowed to do this, but maybe if I do it this way, and people are people and humans are humans, and many of you this morning, if we were to have a seminar after service on tax loopholes, you could walk us right through them because you know all about them. I do too. And loopholes, especially in light of righteousness, will wreck your soul. I'm not talking about tax loopholes this morning. I'm not talking about legal loopholes as it relates to our nation. I'm talking about the righteousness of God and the way that the Pharisees had discovered they could keep the law and yet still harm people. They could keep the law and keep people at a distance from God. They could keep the law and never deal with their own wickedness in their heart. And this morning, if you have come to church and you have determined that you're going to white knuckle it and you're going to keep more rules, I want you to understand Jesus is more interested in changing your heart than just changing your behavior. Now, your behavior needs to change, and the American church needs to hear this, okay? Repentance is still part of the gospel. We ought to turn away from sin, but too many of us tried this backwards. We tried to turn away from sin before Jesus changed our heart. And the gospel says he's going to give us this new way of thinking, this new way of living from the inside out. Third idea I want you to really wrestle with before we even read the text is that righteousness flows both ways. The Pharisees understood righteousness to really flow in one direction. My righteousness is my relationship with the Lord. And this is what most humans do too. All right, how can I get right with God? Maybe so I can get something out of him. How can I get right to God so that maybe I can go to heaven? How can I get right with God? And it's very selfish in that it's you and God, you and God, you and God. And certainly your relationship with the Lord needs to be addressed. But once it is, the law is full, the Old Testament is full of indications that God is interested in how you treat other people. People created in his image. And I'm afraid many of us, if we aren't careful, we look at the word and we're very interested in God, what would you have me do for me and you? And often we miss the parts where God is focused on how we relate to others, how we treat others, how we forgive others, how we love others, how we live life. So that being said, let's read Matthew chapter 5. There are 3 teachings that I will focus on this morning in Matthew chapter 5. There will be 3 more next week. And they really deal with your relationship with others. And Jesus has just said, I've fulfilled the law. He is going to live this out. Jesus is actually going to live these teachings out, and these are very difficult to live out. Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. Jesus says, you've heard that it was said of those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you're offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge and the judge to the guard and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. This is the longest teaching that we will focus on. It is also, I would argue, one of the more difficult of Jesus' teachings to model and live well. The loophole that the Pharisees had discovered or considered was maybe I'll never murder anyone, maybe I'll never kill anyone, maybe I won't even raise my hand to someone. but I can treat them like they're dead to me. I can hate them, disparage them with my words, cut my eyes every time they walk into the room. And Jesus' teaching is difficult here because he wants us to see them as imago Dei, created in God's image. If you're taking notes, I would say it this way: sparing life isn't the same as valuing life. Sparing life isn't the same as valuing life. Well, Jesus, I've never murdered anyone. Jesus is saying, yeah, kudos to you. He says, you've heard it said. In other words, it's in the law, referencing the Old Testament. But I say to you, if you're angry with your brother, you'll be liable to judgment. If you insult your brother, you'll be liable to the council. And whoever says you fool, raka, empty head is what this could be considered. You empty-headed, you'll be liable to the hell of fire. Now, I know that most of us are going to struggle here. Because while it's easy to say, well, I've never taken anyone's life, it's not so easy to say I've never called anyone a fool. It's not so easy to say I've never insulted my brother. It's not so easy to say I've never had anger. Some of your Bibles might have anger without cause, and you'll notice in your Bible, if it's a study Bible, there'll be a note, there'll be an asterisk. This wasn't found in all of the manuscripts. You know, you can let someone live and still write them off, and I think that's what most of us do. I'd never murder. I'd never take a life. But those people are dead to me. Jesus is not impressed that we didn't kill them. He wants us to value them and to love them. And the reason is because murder is the ultimate expression of superiority. If you murder someone, you take their life, you're saying your life has so little value, you ought not to exist. And when we hate them, when we wish that they didn't exist, we are still embracing that superiority, that I am better than you, and nobody needs you, and I don't need you, and I don't want to deal with you. And so we look for this loophole where I may not kill them, but I wish they were dead. I'll kill their reputation. I'll be angry every time that I see them. I'll be angry forever. And this is difficult. Now, you might have heard it said, and this is how I was raised, that Jesus takes the Old Testament, right, and he makes it more difficult. He says, don't just not commit adultery, don't lust. And in ways, that's true. But that's not what he's doing here. He's not just like raising the bar, though the bar is being raised. Don't miss it. What he's really doing is he's fulfilling the law. He's saying, you've missed it. This is what the law is. Why is it that God told them not to murder one another? Was it so they could create loopholes where I may not hit you with a stick, but I still don't like you? No. Jesus is saying the whole point of the law was always for you to see each other as brothers, as sisters, as imago Dei, created in God's image. And you've turned it into, well, as long as I don't kill them, I can treat them like they're dead. And Jesus wants to change how we see our brother, our sister, even those who've wronged us. He will go on to say in other teachings, we're not only to love our neighbor, we're to love our enemy. And this is difficult. And by the way, this is what makes us Christians. It is difficult. And right now in your heart, you're probably like, okay, but maybe like, and if you're not careful and I'm not careful, we look for loopholes too. No, this is what makes us different. It's not just that we read our Bible. It's not just that we go to church on Sunday instead of sleeping. And it's not just that we sing songs without cursing or sexual innuendos in them. This is what makes us different. We refuse to look for loopholes. We determine that, God, if this is right, then I am wrong. And I have to be right. I have to correct this. And so, I was talking with one of our brothers this morning about kind of a spectrum we need to think of this in relation to. And I like to think in terms of linear, and maybe this isn't linear. But on the one hand of the spectrum, you've got what's normal and what's acceptable and what everybody does. Somebody wrongs you, you just hate them. And you wish you could change them. But I hate you. I'm angry with you. And I'm always angry with you. When I see you on Facebook, I'm angry with you. When I think about you, I'm angry with you. And this is normal. This is not where we're to stay. And maybe through maturity, you get to this place where I'm angry with you and I want to change you, but I actually realize I can't change you. That's more mature than this, but it's still, you're angry. They're not changing. What do we do? And I believe through the lens of the gospel, you can begin to see them differently. And you can begin to see, I'm angry with you, and it's not working. I can't change you. It's beyond my control. But I can change me, how I deal with this, how I feel about you. John C. Broger said, anger and bitterness are two noticeable signs of being focused on self and not trusting God's sovereignty in your life. When you believe that God causes all things to work together for good for those who belong to him and love him, you can respond to trials with joy instead of anger or bitterness. Francis de Sales says, there was never an angry man that didn't find his anger unjust, who thought his anger unjust. If you're here this morning and you're saying, Pastor, but you don't know what they've done, you're just in line with a billion other Christians saying, but my anger is righteous. I have righteous anger. Jesus flipped tables. That was less than 1% of Jesus' ministry. Did Jesus have righteous anger? He sure did. I'm not so sure I do. How do I know when I have righteous anger? It won't feel good. It shouldn't feel good. There should be a compelling burden of sorrow behind it. Not, boy, it feels good to raise my voice. It feels so good to be so right. So if we're still on this spectrum, we can get to where, no, I'm not saying what they did was okay. I'm not glossing over their flaws, but I understand I can't change them. All I can do is change my heart. And then the brother I was talking with this morning, he said, I'd say there's another level, and this is so good. He said, it's where you get to the place where I am them. I am wicked. I am broken. I may not have done what they did, but I've hurt people. And this is why Jesus would say, how dare you withhold forgiveness and expect forgiveness? Frederick Buechner said, of the 7 deadly sins, anger is possibly the most fun. To lick your wounds, to smack your lips over grievances long past, to savor to the last toothsome morsel both the pain you are given and the pain you are giving back. In many ways, it is a feast fit for a king. The chief drawback is that what you are wolfing down is yourself. The skeleton at the feast is you. Jesus turns their understanding of a teaching on murder, and he focuses it instead on anger, on forgiveness, and insults. I will confess, of all of the sins that we tend to overlook in our lives, I would say anger has robbed me of the most time. But you don't know what they've done. I know. What they did to you was wrong. But robbing yourself of a decade being bitter, that's a poison you've chosen to ingest. There's more we could say here, and there's a whole message here, but Jesus doesn't end here. He turns right to another difficult topic in verse 27. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out, throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. Jesus is taking a this, that, it's more than this, it is that approach. And here he's focusing and pointing out that restraint isn't the same as respect. Oh, you may not have slept with her. You may not have spent time with him. Again, Jesus is taking this law and he's getting to the heart of it. Because what we tend to do as humans is say, okay, well, I didn't actually commit the act, but I sure did think about it, and I sure did focus on it. And Jesus wants you to do more than stop thinking dirty thoughts, okay? Hear me out, y'all. Let's be adults in the room. Do you know what Jesus is actually digging for here? He wants you and me to see members of the opposite sex as more than pleasure things to behold. He wants you to see the dignity and the humanity of that man or that woman. Now, I feel it necessary to say a few things here. First of all, this is a difficult teaching. It is only more difficult because you and I have been sexualized our whole life. Around the 60s, especially the 70s and 80s, things began to become normal on television, even sitcom television, and sex has become more than just a beautiful thing that God created between a man and a woman inside of holy marriage. It has become a punchline. It's become a thing to focus on. I told my wife, I love the genre of yacht rock. There's a local radio station that began playing yacht rock, but they play some different songs that aren't in my yacht rock rotation. And I told my wife one day, I said, you know what frustrates me? They play a lot of songs that are still yacht rock, but they're focused primarily on sex. My wife was raised in a Christian home like I was. She was homeschooled, but I was home a lot more by myself, and I was a little more exposed to culture. And so my wife was like, this song isn't about sex. And I'd say, I hate to break it to you, it is. And so maybe you haven't been as sexualized as others in our generation, but were you to ask any man in this room, if they open any app, it does not take long for them to be given something suggestive because the app simply knows they're a male. And if they hesitate, if they stutter, that's all they're going to see from then on. Your algorithm is designed to show you what your eye will pause upon. Now look, we all know that pornography has wrecked and ruined our ideas of sex, our ideas of the opposite sex. But more than that, it has wrecked how we look at humans, how we view one another. Now, as I've said that, if you're not careful, you'll begin to think like the Pharisees. Well, I have an excuse. I've been exposed to more sexual material, and it's true. Were you to go interview any Christian from 500 years ago and they were to discover that every one of us have access through our devices to watching humans engage in sexual activity whenever we want, it would blow their mind. Were you to tell them the average young man or young woman is waiting later and later and later to get married, it would blow their mind. And somehow we're encouraging them to maintain their virginity, their purity, when they have all of these temptations on these devices. And so if we're not careful, we'll say, well, you're right, Pastor Mark. It is just harder now. Don't give in to that lie. It is harder. It is difficult, but that's no excuse. Many of us know someone who had a heart attack or a scare with health, and suddenly they began taking their eating, their exercise more seriously. Same person, different results. Why? Because now they care about their body and they want to make sure they make it to their kids' high school graduation. And so, whereas before they didn't have self-control, now they have self-control. Whereas before they just did what they wanted, now they do what they don't want to do. Why? Because their desire has been really come to grips with, if I don't change, this is going to rob me, this is going to cost me. And so Jesus says this demands serious attention. And I heard it said years ago, and I just cannot ever forget it. He was the student pastor at the church I grew up at. He said, don't tell me you're going to tell by the statement how long ago this was. He said, don't tell me you're struggling with pornography if you have a computer in your house. This is way before smartphones. Regularly, when I talk with men about pornography, I'll say, well, hey, what would it look like for you to get a dumb phone? And it's always the same. Well, I can't do that because of work or this or this or this. We always have a reason why we can't deal with the thing that Jesus calls us to deal with here. And I won't lie to you. As a teenager, you read verses 29 through 30, you get really scared. Pluck your eye out, cut your right hand off. It's better to enter into heaven with one eye and one hand than to go into hell. Jesus is using strong language here because he takes it seriously. And what I would encourage you and me this morning to do is to ask ourselves, why does he take it so seriously? If a man are to look upon a woman with lustful intent, because the loophole had been used to allow men to sexualize women. And certainly it goes both ways. Today, nearly 50% of women are using pornography. Men, it's like 99%. The stats are always higher, and those are the people who confess. So what do? Do we just throw our hands up and say, well, Pastor, it's the 21st century? Once again, no. This is what makes us different. And I want you to hear me say this because it's difficult to say, and it's a little uncomfortable for you to hear, but you've got to hear me. The church stands against the sexualization of humans. This is why we are careful what we do wear. This is why we are careful what we do watch and what we do listen to. This is why we are careful when our young men and our young women are growing into their bodies, we don't just let them flaunt themselves. Why? Because we are living in an over-sexualized culture. I'll just tell you a little story. It might make you uncomfortable. I really don't care. I'm into preaching now, so I'm preaching. I was talking with a gentleman whose daughter goes to a Christian school, and the Christian school has decided they're going to allow and encourage the girls to wear booty shorts when they play a specific sport. And he said, I don't want my daughter to wear that. I said, well, let me tell you something, brother. This argument's not going to work of what about the boys stumbling? I said, you've got to remind them, we will not sexualize girls here. That's the language you use. It gives them no benefit to wear it. It is simply so they can wear it. Some of you are getting real uncomfortable. You need to hear this, brothers and sisters. This is what makes us different. We don't allow culture to sexualize our children. We stand against it. You don't have to clap. You don't have to clap. We're all uncomfortable. It's fine. We're going to let this tension ride all the way to the end, and then we'll cut it, all right? I care about your sons, your daughters, my sons, our children. And I was raised in an overly sexualized generation like you. And what makes us different is we cannot change culture. We don't have the power, we don't have the authority, but what we can do is in the church say, we're going to live differently. And the reason I brought that up with his brother is because his daughter does go to a Christian school. You understand? I'm not here this morning saying, well, the public school needs to do it. We're not going to win that battle. Probably not, right? But where Christians are gathered, we ought to do Christian things. And we ought to reject this notion that, well, Pastor Mark, you're just body shaming. Absolutely not. I'm doing the opposite. I'm telling you that your body is wonderful and beautiful and created in God's image. And I'm not going to argue with you over how long or too short or that's not the point. The point is that we actually give thought and consideration to what we put on, how we live. And it's more than just a this to this. And the point of this passage is not to regulate, well, what they wear, what he wears, what she wears, but instead, because here's the truth. Every church, every Christian school, every Christian organization can have the most modest lifestyle. You're going to live and work in the real world. So you're going to have to deal with this. So on the spectrum, again, using the spectrum as a tool, there's what's normal. And this is where the world lives. You're with a group of girls, you're a girl. You're with a group of guys, you're a guy. An attractive man, an attractive woman walks by, and you start naming their body parts. Cutting them apart, basically. Devouring them. That's normal. Christians, hear me. Brothers, sisters, I don't care if you're the only Christian around when that starts. You and I have to make it clear and firm. I'm not engaging in that. Not even I won't say anything. Just walk away. If you're not strong enough to say why it's wrong, walk away. People will get the hint that you're not into that. So here's normal, walking away. But then there's also standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to let you sexualize my children. I'm not going to engage in it. But here's the thing. This is all public, and here's what we're talking about. When you have the opportunity, someone attractive walks by, what do? Every man I've ever talked to about pornography talks about the little battles and the big battle. The big battle comes when you're all by yourself. You have a device, you have magazines, whatever it is, whatever culture you're talking about, you've got the opportunity, or you're all alone with your girlfriend, you're all alone with whoever. The point is, the battle begins in the small battles. If every woman that walks by or every man that walks by you is an opportunity for your eyes to go up and down, don't be surprised when you lose alone later. You've got to win at the restaurant. You've got to win at work. You've got to win in all these little battles. And it snowballs. Hey, I've had self-control this long. I'm not going to give in now. I'm not going to objectify them. But again, we're still here where we're kind of white-knuckling it. Jesus wants us to get to the place where we not only know it's wrong and we're like, I shouldn't do that because it'll break God's heart, but we have a desire to honor that person because we care about them and we love them. This is radically different than how the world lives. Third and shortest little section here that Jesus deals with that we'll focus on this morning, Matthew chapter 5, verses 31 through 32. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Whew. What? What is Jesus talking about? In their culture, only men could initiate the divorce, and it was a hotly debated topic when Jesus focused here. And so Jesus is actually unpacking a very of-the-moment question, and he's siding with one side. One group said that you could divorce your wife for any reason, even if her attitude was bad one day. And so what happened was men began abusing women because they would marry them, have children with them. They would spend about 20, 30 years with them, and they wake up one day and say, I want a younger woman. She no longer pleases me. It was as silly as her food doesn't pleasure me anymore. I don't want her as my wife. And they would divorce them because the law had this little loophole where Moses said, if you give them a certificate of divorce. So understand this, loopholes lead to abuse. That's what Jesus is saying here, and that's what he's dealing with. Loopholes that lead to abuse. And when you're always looking for loopholes, you're always going to find a way to abuse them. And here it was a loophole that was allowing for not just the objectification of women, but really, it was the abuse of the vulnerable in their society, which then was women. Now today, women have a lot more rights. By the way, thanks in large part to the Christian church. The first major faith group to give women any respect whatsoever. That was why Rome really didn't know what to do with them for the first 300 years. Jesus here is answering a specific question in a specific culture. And he was frustrated with how they had turned the teaching of the Old Testament into a loophole to get what you want. I'm convinced we do the same thing. We search for ways to get out of it. And what that reveals is we don't actually love the person, the Lord, whoever it is that we're trying to find a loophole with. So what I want to do is give you the answer for all of this before we close. The only answer for anger, lust, and loopholes is love. That's it. Why would you look for a loophole if you love the person? I don't need out of this marriage. I love her. I don't need out of this relationship with the Lord. I love him. I don't need it to be easier. I love him. He's worth it. I don't need to lust and just fixate on I have a love for every woman, for every man that crosses my path. And my love for the Lord, my love for others will not allow me to live this way anymore. And so I'm going to do whatever it takes. By the way, it's not just a switch you flip like, I'm no longer attracted to women. I'm no longer attracted to men. No. It's a battle in your mind, but it's built on love, not fear. Love, not consequences. And the only way to deal with anger is to embrace love. This is why Jesus would say to love your enemies, to love your neighbor. There's nobody who doesn't fit into these categories. And Jesus modeled this perfectly. I would remind you, we tend to think that when Jesus was crucified, there was no just cause for him to be crucified. That's right. There was no just cause. As a matter of fact, they had to manufacture it. But understand, do you know what they manufactured about him? That he claimed to be God. That's all they could come up with. You know why? There was no one who would stand up and say he hurt me. There was no one who would stand up and say he defrauded me. There was no one who would say he robbed me. There was no one who would believe. Why? Because he never did these things. He fulfilled the law. He loved perfectly. Now this is a heavy teaching. And I'm quite sure that you are convicted like I am about passages like this. So what do you do with a message like this? Well, I would say we need to start at one end and work our way through. Whenever somebody's got a big task, we just got to break it up and do the best we can. I would ask it this way. Who do you need to forgive this morning as it relates to anger? Who do you need to love more effectively as it relates to looking for loopholes? Maybe you're married this morning and you've been taking advantage of your spouse. What are some steps you need to take to love people more fully as humans when it relates to looking, lusting, desire? Who do you love, but you haven't shown them that love very well? You've taken every loophole and every excuse to take advantage of them or to let them love you while you don't love in return. Who are you called to love in your life, but you've used them to advance your own needs and have not been sacrificial in your love toward them? This is a sacrificial type of love. As it relates to anger, I've found that when I'm angry with someone, the best way to deal with it is to begin praying for them. And not just praying imprecatory psalms of condemnation and harm, but praying for God to bless them, praying for God to speak to them, praying for God to use them, praying for God to be in their life. Speak highly of them whenever I get the chance. Refuse to slander them. Watch as you do these things as the Lord begins to soften your heart. Maybe the second teaching is especially difficult for you. This morning, I would encourage you to make a covenant with your eyes. John Piper used to always say that sin, especially sins of lust, tend to frame the world as small. You get focused on the screen. You get focused, everything else just goes away. And whenever you're dealing with sins that focus your attention on something small, go out and look around at the big world. Go on a walk. Look at the sky. Remind yourself of the beauty that God has given us. Embrace the small wins. Determine that today you are going to look everyone in the eyes and only the eyes. You're not going to allow people to be body parts. As it relates to Jesus' teaching on divorce, maybe you're here this morning and you need to commit to serving your spouse sacrificially, regardless of what they've done or hurt or said to you. The goal here is not just better behavior. Underlying all of these, Jesus was pointing clearly, your heart, if you take advantage of loopholes, if you lust but don't sleep with them, if you hate while not murdering them, your heart is rotten and it needs to change. Our goal this morning is not just to have a week of better behavior. Our goal is to think in a new way, to look in a new way, to enjoy married life in a different way. The good news is Jesus knew you would struggle with this. And so, before he ascended to heaven, he said, the Comforter will come. The Holy Spirit will empower you, and you will be able to walk this out. You won't walk it out perfectly, but you will be able to live differently than the world. And watch as God begins to shape and mold your heart. Brothers and sisters, this is how we are called to live as Christians. Don't excuse it. Don't loophole your way through it. Determine, I'm going to live different in a world that hates with no forgiveness, lusts and sexualizes everything, and looks for an escape route at the first sign of trouble. I'm going to love well. I'm going to control my eyes. and I am not going to allow anger and bitterness to rob me of the joy of the Lord. Let's pray.